What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode of the show, I sat down with an amazing woman who has built a company called Berman Media PD. This is a company that helps real estate agents, loan officers, and other clients get more engagement on social media and actually turn social media into business. Welcome to the show, Michelle Berman Michael. Welcome to the show today, Michelle. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm awesome, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to get you on here. You've got a very interesting company. We've talked a little beforehand about how you're helping real estate agents, loan officers, and others to create more engagement through social media that actually results in conversions into business, right? Which there's so many people out there talking about how to do social, and I think a lot of times people are afraid to talk about how to get business from it, like right now, which your company specializes in. So before we dive into that, why don't you take a minute or two just to tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and how you started the company that you did.
Yeah, so thanks so much for all that. I started working in the corporate space like most people after graduating from college, and I actually started in the PR realm, which was really fun at the time. It was kind of new, and you're fresh out of college. You're like, I have my first job, yay! But I very much so realized early on that the industry was very saturated with copy pasting, right? So every type of client kind of got the same sort of service, regardless of what industry they were in. Everything was kind of about the money in a way, and that was something that just didn't super sit well with me. Because if I'm a client and I have an individual need, it made sense to me that those needs would be met if I was paying an organization, and that was not happening. So I decided to break off and start my own company in 2014. So I started Berman Media PD. PD stands for Palm Desert. A lot of people love to ask me that, but actually Palm Desert is where I created my company, so that's where the PD comes from. But I started my own social media management company, essentially, is what it started as. And it was really designed to be where I could show other individuals how to be utilizing the platform on in a better way. But what I very quickly realized that I'm not a social media management company. Well, yes, we do that. What I really specialize in is human psychology and sales psychology, and sort of where those two things merge. And so I believe that sort of on accident, I fell into this space of prospecting and the specialty that I really have around that. So Berman Media was really built around this idea of, if we're trying to create opportunity through social media, we have to understand how people operate. We have to understand how to actually sell something to someone. And really it comes down to, are you good at communicating, and can you have a conversation? It's because I think a lot of people get scared. They think they have to be good at sales in order to do it, and you don't have to be good at sales at all. Yes, obviously you will get better at it, but in theory, that's not a qualification. So, fast forward to 2019, I had been doing it for several years, and I decided to create an opportunity for people to learn how to do it themselves. So that's where Beyond the Method was born. And fast forward to today, we're middle to end of 2023, and we have clients in 47 states, and we just landed our first several clients in Canada. So it's been a wild ride, but I'm super excited about what we do and how we do it, and I think changing the message of sort of changing I guess more so changing the taste that people have in their mouth about social media is really what I strive to do, because it's so much more than what people think it is.
Yeah, what do you think people think it is?
Great question. I really think that people think that social media management, like when they think of that phrase, or when they think of, hey, I need help with my social media, they sort of think that it should be this kind of cheap thing where they get someone to help them post content for them. The idea really is that it becomes this evergreen thing and they can sort of step out of it. And the problem with that is there's a lot of disconnect between what the company is doing and what the content actually looks like when it hits your account. And so it's really important that the content you're producing really speaks to who you are as an individual, and there's a level of where you have to be involved in that, right? You don't have to be the one posting, you don't have to be the one writing the copy, but you have to be invested and you have to be involved in it. And that's why for us, like, and for what I created, the idea was by adding this prospecting aspect and really focusing heavily on that, I was able to create an opportunity for the person paying us to do it, or the individual who didn't want to have to do every single thing, to still be connected and to still be invested and involved in the process, without all that work, right? And so I think people think that social media management is this, again, just this sort of cheap thing where they can just pay somebody to do it and walk away from it. And the problem is, I mean, how many people do you know, Dan, that will say, like, I'm paying for social media, but I haven't gotten any business off of it? Um,
Well, yeah, that brings into like loss aversion, right? So there's a deep psychological thing in there, and people will, if you buy a stock and lose money on it, you're not going to tell anyone about it typically, or you'll take more risk and hold on to it in hopes that it'll go back up. And they've proven that people will take more risk to avoid the loss than when they're like up on the flip side. So I definitely think if it's not working for people, very few feel secure and confident enough to actually admit that.
Yeah. And I have so many conversations with agents and LOs, I mean, literally every day, where they're saying, Michelle, like, my engagement's so bad, like, I don't get any DMs on my account, or, I'm paying all this money for all these fancy videos, but no one's reached out to me to actually buy a house. And it comes down to one thing, and it comes down to the same question that I ask them every single time. And anybody listening to this, whether now or on the recording or whatever, right? Like, ask yourself this question: do you wake up every morning to a multitude of messages in your inbox of conversations that need to be continued? The answer is yes or no. But 99.5%, again, I'm just making that number up, but I'm very close to accurate, I think, would say no. And so the reason for that is they're so focused on what I like to say is kind of the passive approach to social media, where they're just posting content, putting it out, and sort of sitting back and being reactive to waiting for somebody to reach out to them. And they're not adding the active aspect to that. They're not actively engaging on their own to create opportunities. So imagine if you could merge those two things, like, what would happen? It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I think there's been a lot of influencers that have created this false illusion that just anybody can go out and easily create content, and at some point they'll build an audience that will just come to them with business. And I think people like buying into that message because it sounds nice. It sounds very easy, and I don't have to do outreach, and I don't have to do proactive prospecting, and so people buy into it because it sounds really nice. And I think there's a few people that it does work for at scale. Now the funny thing is, all the people that it does work for at scale have like huge staffs that help them with their content. Like, how many people does Gary Vee have working on his content, right? So can the average person duplicate that? Well, probably not, and they probably can't monetize, afford to delay monetizing like he could. So, I do get why it is easy to buy into that. And then, even in the real estate space, like, there's some people that are doing that, but there's also a lot of people with huge followings of agents, and like, it's not hard to look up their sales number. Like, they're attracting agents' attention, but not necessarily home buyers and home sellers, which you can see just by looking at on their Zillow or wherever.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. It's absolutely true. And I think that's the problem, right? The influencer game has definitely created sort of this shiny object syndrome of like, well, if I just get more followers, then that's how I'll find this golden sauce of all of a sudden I'll have all this business coming at me. And the reality is that followers really don't mean anything, right? So, because
Right.
I was on a podcast yesterday, and the gentleman was like, no, like, I'll straight up tell everybody listening to this, like, I bought 10,000 followers, like, to get to the 10,000 so I could have the swipe up in my stories back when that was a thing. And what happened is they ended up having to restart his account altogether because even though the vanity metric of it looked good, like it wasn't, if anything, Instagram was shutting him down more than actually showing him more. So it became a big problem in our industry, or really just in the social media space as a whole. People were so hyper focused on the vanity metrics that made them feel good. And by buying into, I'll get you the ability to go viral with a reel, or I'll get you 10,000 followers, or I'll be able to get you, 5 deals off of Instagram every single month. How are you doing that, right? Like, what are you doing to get that? And just posting videos, unless you're the Gary V's of the world, that's not going to happen by just posting content and being like, okay, time to pray. Like that, it just doesn't work like that.
And it changes too. So what worked with a video or content, last year might be completely different. So if you're only relying on that leg of it and then it changes, which it will, like, you're going to be in trouble. Like, just look at TikTok, a couple of years ago, and, I'll be straight about it. I could post on there and a bad video would get me 10,000 views and a good one would be over 100,000. And now it's like a bad one is like 500 to 1,000 for me, and a good one is maybe 10 to 20,000, and I have 300,000 followers on that platform. But something changed with how videos, and at first I was banging my head against the wall, but then I looked at like Gary V's numbers, and even him on that platform went, he plummeted it in terms of views, per followers and all of that. So like things can change with that as the platforms evolve and change. So if you don't have some other way, it's not going to be enough to sustain your business, I believe.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think Instagram specifically for this matter, like if you look at what Instagram was in 2014 versus what Instagram is today, it's wildly different, right? Like think of all of the things that come out within the app, right? This button does this and this button does this, and well, now you got to do reels, and here's all these trending audio, and here's the filters, now you can tag people in your stories and you can collaborate on a story. Like you just have all of these, what I like to say again is these shiny object syndrome situations, which I believe that yes, there's value to that, to the new things. But what really needs to happen and what people really need to focus on is what works that will transcend all of that. No matter what new thing comes out, no matter how the algorithm changes, to your point, Dan, because it's going to happen, right? So if you know that those things are going to change and Instagram's going to change the feed from a chronological to based off of results or analytics, what it shows first, or if Instagram's going to suppress your content from anyone that's not actively engaging with your account, and it's going to show your content more to the people who you are actively engaging with, like, if you know all of that, then just focus on what actually matters, which is producing content consistently. Doesn't have to be great, but it needs to be consistent, right? And that's a big, important message. I record everything with my phone. I do not have a fancy video camera. I don't have a fancy videographer that comes out and takes videos of me every day. Like, I don't do that. What I do is I open my phone and I talk to it. But the big thing that's really a game-changing opportunity for everybody here is the active approach, right? So like if I know that my analytics are starting to go down because the algorithm is changing, the solution of how to fix that doesn't change. The solution is active prospecting, right? Now, if you want to go viral with a reel, right? Because that's what people are telling you need to be doing. How does that happen? It doesn't happen just by picking a good audio. It happens by making a good video, picking a good audio, and guess what? When your reel goes live, you better engage like gangbusters to make sure that the Instagram algorithm as a whole is going to show your content to as many people as possible in that first time frame, that first 5 to 7 minutes when that matters the most, right? In order to achieve the viral reel. So no matter what you're trying to do, regardless of whether it was 2014 and you were just trying to get, a video to get 10,000 views, or whether it's 2023 and you're trying to get a reel to go viral, the solution to how that happens remains the same. The solution is engagement, and the answer is, are you giving it or are you not? And liking your friend's posts every day is not engagement.
Yeah. So what what is engagement? How, if someone listening to this was like, okay, I believe you, I want to start prospecting or engaging or being proactive, how do they do it?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question, so I'll do my best to answer it simply. But really, what you need to think about, it's two parts. So passive prospecting, which is the reactive approach, right? Which is producing content consistently. You have to have a message, you have to have a brand that can build credibility over a long, sustained period of time. Your content, what you post on your grid or in your feed, that is your evergreen approach. The idea is that you create a strategy and you start producing content, and it will sustain itself over a long period of time. Now, if you couple that with engagement by actively prospecting, that's where the magic equation becomes equals conversion consistently. So that piece, if you just look at engagement as one section of this equation, how do you do it? And the answer is, if you know who you are as an agent and you are comfortable sharing those things on the platform, right? Meaning, you're an outdoors person, you like CrossFitting, you like coffee, you like fishing, like I like yoga, like whatever it might be. I'm also a diehard coffee person, so I love like lattes and I love coffee art. So for whatever reason, whenever I go, I like taking pictures and posting it. Like that's just who I am. And so in my passive approach, I have to share those things, right? I have to be willing to open up about who I am as a person in the passive approach, so that when I start engaging and I'm actively prospecting, people can see messages from me, people will receive them, I can talk to them about certain things, and then they can go to my platform and look at my content and be like, that matches up, right? So that connection is happening. So that's important to talk about, because when you're actively prospecting, which I'm about to try to explain as simply as possible, but when you're actively engaging, the idea is that you have all of these things that you can connect on. So if you're a real estate agent and you're trying to do this, the best and simplest way is to ask yourself a question of, when you're not at home and when you're not at work, where do you go that you could potentially be generating conversations that could turn into business, right? I go to the gym every day. My husband's an ultra marathon runner. He also works for the military. I also am an entrepreneur, and I also am very heavily involved in the military spouse community, right? So I think of all of these things. I'm also a mom. I have a 2-year-old. I also have 2 rescue dogs, and I donate money to a rescue facility every year as a tax write-off, but also because I love dogs. But I have all these things that make up who I am. And if I were to say, how can I go find more of those people on the platform? That's the answer to, where do you go engage? How do you find them? Because you have to know that about yourself, and then you have to go find those people on the platform. So let's say you have, and cut me off at any time, Dan, if you feel
Sure.
like you need me to explain something, but
No,
think
keep
good?
going. That's great. Yep.
Okay. I was like, just cut me off because I know I'll just keep going here. So, if you have a tracker, right, and this is how I always explain it to everybody. I just want you to imagine, like, sort of in your mind, a 5-day Excel spreadsheet. So in a big Excel doc, you'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you'll have 2 weeks worth. So you'll have week 1 and you'll have week 2. You'll go through all of week 1, then you'll switch to week 2, and then you'll switch back to week 1, right? So that's sort of how visually it looks. Each of the 2 weeks, you have 5 days of the week, and each of the 5 days, you're going to pick a very specific category of where your ideal clients would potentially hang out. And when I say hang out, I mean quite literally hang out in real life, where you can then go find them where they are hanging out in those communities on Instagram, or in this case, you can do it on Facebook. You can do this on LinkedIn. We have clients that do it all the time. So you can do it anywhere, really. But let's hypothetically say that my ideal client as a real estate agent is a military family that's either PCSing in or PCSing out from wherever they live, and they're into fitness. Right, so that's like my ideal client avatar, because I love fitness. I can talk about it all day, every day, and I am a military wife. So let's just say that that's my avatar of my person. So on Mondays every week, it's a non-negotiable day, and Mondays are where all you're doing is engaging with people who are already consuming your content. So Mondays is kind of an already locked in. That's sort of just what that day is. And on that day, all you're going to be doing is going through the list of people who are already following you, scrolling that list and engaging with those people. Now, obviously, you're going to have people that are following you that are not your ideal client. They might be spam. They might be, something that is not relevant to what you're trying to do. Skip them, move to the next person, right? But I mean, for example, I was just talking to a client the other day, and she's like, I have like 3,000 followers, and I have no idea whom 3/4 of these people are. And I was like, perfect. That's great, right? Because that means you have a lot of people that are consuming you that you don't know yet. So that's a lot of opportunity for you to be able to create conversation, right? So that's Mondays, and we always do Monday that way. That's how it is for us personally, and for all of our clients. That's just how we.
So you're gonna scroll through that list and then like some of their posts or comment on it, I guess, or.
Yep. So you're gonna like a piece of content on their feed. You're gonna comment on something on their feed, and then you're gonna send them a DM, right? So you're gonna look and see if they have a story that's active. And if they have a story that's active, the idea is that you're obviously responding to the story. And for sake of time, I mean, I really don't think we have time to get into all of the weeds of it, but the way you send that initial message when you are replying to someone's story is really important, because how that message is received ultimately determines whether or not that's going to go anywhere or not. So the math metrics for everybody who, maybe you're a data person, the idea would be 45 comments and 20 story replies on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. Which means you're doing 45 comments on people's content on their feed, and you're doing a total of 20 DMs or story replies per day. And the reason it's 45 and 20 and not 45 and 45 is because the idea is if you go and you're engaging on someone's content on their actual feed, that would count as one comment, obviously. And then you would click on their profile and see if they have a story that's active, and then you're also responding to a story from the same person. So you're sort of double dipping into the same individual, with the intent of like making sure that you can catch this person's attention. And then the reason it's 45-20 is not every person that you comment on something on their feed is also going to have a story up. So there's a reason for sort of the method to the madness of it being about half. So in theory, hopefully 50% of the people that you comment on something on their feed also have a story up.
Okay.
Which is a pretty safe metric, and we've seen that over the years that's a pretty safe assumption. Now let's move to like a Tuesday, and I'm just going to do one day, and then the rest of the days I'll explain if you want to get into. But so like Mondays are your non-negotiable days. Tuesdays, for example, let's use the avatar of me, right? And say that my ideal client is a fitness person who happens to be in the military community. So for me, I'm a CrossFitter. I CrossFit 3-4 days a week, and I also run a lot. So I would find a whole bunch of CrossFit gyms in my local area. I would put them in one category for that day, and I would go find all of the accounts of those CrossFit gyms. I would find all of the geotags of those CrossFit gyms. I would also find all of the hashtags related to those CrossFit gyms in my area. So that day on my tracker, all I'm doing is I'm doing 45 comments and 20 story replies between those three categories. So between accounts, hashtags, and geotags, I'm finding 45 accounts to engage on, or 45 pieces of content to engage on, and I'm doing 20 story replies throughout that day. Now, I've had a couple people who have asked me this recently, where they're like, well, why would I engage on a CrossFit Gym's post? Like, why would I do that? And the idea there is you're engaging with content that your ideal client is also seeing all the time, right? So if you are commenting on a piece of content that the CrossFit Gym posts, because you're an active CrossFitter yourself, anybody that's following that account, like all of the rest of us that might go to that gym, or anybody that might be considering going to that gym, or just friends and family of members of the gym, they're seeing your comment on the content. So the idea is that they see this other person that has this shared interest in CrossFit, they click on your profile, they go consume your content, they realize, oh, this is a real person. I can see pictures on their grid of them actually working out, or maybe they have a highlight of them working out. Oh, and they're also a real estate agent. And hold on, wait a minute, I also just got a story, like a DM from them. This must be a real person. Like I'm more willing and more likely psychologically to take that next step and engage back with them.
Right.
So there's a method to that, right? And it's a big thing. So all I would do on Tuesday is that. Now there's a lot of options as far as how to pick different categories. I have a lot of clients like you, for example, right, where maybe you have a lead list that you work off of. Maybe you're recruiting and you have the top 100 agents that you're trying to recruit to come work with you or be a part of your organization. You can assign those lists to days. So you could say Wednesday, all I'm doing is engaging with the top 100 agents in my area because my goal is to recruit as many of them as possible. So at that point, you're doing the same thing. You're doing your 45-20 across those 100 names that you have as a list. Maybe you pull the CSV file out of your CRM. Now we also have a lot of people who are buying data, right? Like RedX, for example, is a great organization where people are buying leads from. Or buying data, right? A lot of FISBOs, a lot of expireds, a lot of, they call it geo leads. So people are paying for that data, and maybe you assign that data to Thursday. So you would pull that list of people from your geo lead account within RedX, right? And you would download that CSV file. It usually pops up as an Excel doc, and you would copy and paste all those names into Thursday. And your job on Thursday is to go find as many of them on social as humanly possible and start engaging with them, right? And we have recently done this and had really good results as far as percentage of people we've been able to find. So there's a lot that goes into that as well, but you can leverage data. You can also leverage things like, if you have a list of people who have recently sold in your area, right? You can pull that list and you can put that list in a day. You can even do a day where all you're doing is engaging with small businesses in your area, right? Especially because if your goal is to be a city mayor or community mayor, which you and I talked about that when we talked on the phone, a lot of people say that they want to do that, but they're not actually doing anything to do that. Having a day where all you're doing is engaging with other small businesses in the area in this structured way that I'm explaining, gives you the opportunity to not just get businesses to connect with you, but it gives you the opportunity for businesses to say, hey, yeah, actually, I would love for you to come in, or yeah, you should shoot a video in our location or whatever, and start to create that community mayor approach. And it's really important to do all of it.
And then, so you basically have a different activity or list Monday through Friday that you're doing this plan?
Yep. Fridays are your other non-negotiable day, and this is a really fun one. So Fridays is your re-engage day. That's what we call it. And really all that means is any of the conversations you've had Monday through Thursday in your DMs where maybe you've had a decent back and forth, maybe you've gone back and forth 3 or 4 times or whatever, and the conversation organically comes to a stopping point. That's actually a great thing. Now, obviously, we want the conversation to turn into business as fast as possible, but the reality is that it's going to take nurturing. So on the re-engage day, you go back to your messages, and anybody that you connected with over Monday through Thursday that you've had a good back and forth with, you initiate a new conversation, or you reignite the conversation by going back to their content, seeing if they have a new piece of content out, seeing if they have a new story up, and you're creating a fresh engagement with them, but you're not saying, hey, all of a sudden I noticed our conversation stopped. That's because that would be silly, right? All you want to do is re-engage with them very organically. Do they have a new story up that you can connect to? Like maybe you bring up, hey, I saw that, we haven't talked since Monday, but I just saw your story. So you can like subliminally drop that you are trying to start the conversation or pick the conversation back up. But in most cases, I would tell you to just re-engage without even mentioning the fact that the conversation organically stopped at a prior time. But that re-engage day, think of it as your second touch point. So most transactions take 7 to 10 touch points to convert. So think of that re-engage day as that sort of second touch point, and maybe it takes 6 to 7 of those before you then go for the actual ask where you're going to set the appointment. But yeah, long story short, and I'll stop myself here because I could just keep going, but I would say if you want to be successful on Instagram, or really on social media in general, period, whatever platform it is that you're deciding is your platform of choice, you have to be willing to pound pavement, right? And you and I talked about this offline of like cold calling. I cold call all the time. That's what you were saying, and you're like, this would be way easier. Like, why wouldn't I do that? And that's really the specialty here, or I shouldn't say specialty, that's really sort of the secret here of, can you take an action that is already part of your normal day-to-day as a real estate agent, and can you make it go farther? Can you leverage it in a stronger way so that you're converting in a significantly higher capacity than you could if all you were doing is cold calling?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think with cold calling, um, some people can never get over call reluctance and the fear of rejection. So
Yeah.
I do think this method is probably easier for people that have that fear, because if someone doesn't respond to your engagement, it's probably not as hard on on you as them saying no on the phone or hanging up. So I think in that aspect it's probably easier. How much time per day are you telling does it take to do this? The 45
Well,
comments.
how long do you spend per day cold calling, Dan?
Not enough. I typically do 1 to 2 hours a day.
Okay, so
Do more though.
replace your straight up standard, hour to 2 hours of cold calling with engagement.
Yeah, or do
And
both.
that hour to 2 hours is going to go way further. So what I will say, and I want to kind of pick on you in a fun way here and
Yeah.
expose sort of the issue with cold calling, which is if you're a good cold caller, right, which obviously you are, Dan, that means that you're okay with rejection. That means you're okay with someone saying, I'm not interested. And that also means that you're good at being able to overcome that, right? You're good at being able to
Sure.
overcome objections to continue the conversation. So imagine if you're not good at those things. So if you're the opposite of that and you're like, you can't get over the fear of rejection, right? This becomes one of those things that makes it a lot easier for someone to get started in the prospecting piece. But on the flip side, if you're a seasoned cold caller like yourself, Dan, how can you scale yourself, or how can you take yourself out of the front half of that, right? Or the hard, like, sort of think of it as like delegating, but in a positive way, right? Because for me, I don't take the inbound sales calls unless they're scheduled on my calendar. I only take the calls once they've been pre-qualified to even speak to me, right? So by transitioning your 1 to 2 hours into the prospecting realm on social, most people are 1 to 2 hours. That was a pretty standard answer. So if in that time somebody is helping you with this engagement, creating all of this new activity, and then you only have to come in and spend 20, 30 minutes responding to messages, that's a lot different for your day, right? So you're able to actually only spend time in your kind of love language lane, or where the highest and best use of your time really is as the person trying to generate the business or the moneymaker, right? So I don't take the inbound sales calls because somebody fields those for me, like my executive assistant, right? And then by the time I am on the phone with somebody, I know that they are following me on Instagram. I know that they're consuming my content in my free Facebook group, and I know that they at least have some semblance of an understanding that there's an investment involved in working with me. So it takes all of that. Now I'm the one that has to overcome all these objections and convince this person over the phone that they should actually listen to me, because all of that's been done. So that's the same thing with engagement. And that's where I was going with that, is if you're doing all of this in DMs correctly, you are doing all of that pre-qualifying. So by the time you actually end up on the phone with someone, it is someone that is actually supposed to be on the phone with you and is genuinely interested in what that next step might be, versus I'm a cold calling and I could get someone that's interested, I could get someone that's not, and maybe they're like not interested, but they want me to follow up in 3 months, right? Like, you get all of that stuff out and you're only fielding calls that are ready to go or very darn close to being able to say they're ready to convert.
How does the average real estate agent go from engagement to getting someone that wants to refer them a deal or buy or sell a house?
Um,
So you're engaging with people, right? But then how do
yeah.
you transition them from an engaged
Like a
follower?
personal piece to a business piece, is that sort of what
How
you
do you,
were
how do
going?
you how do you go from engagement to I'm helping them list their home?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see where you're going with that. I wanted to make sure I understood your questions. How I teach this is how that initial message sounds, right? So when you're initially sending a message, I'm going to use you as an example, Dan, and let's just say I'm a real estate agent trying to earn your business, Dan, as somebody who I want you to let me help you buy or sell. So if I'm the agent commenting on your story, I might say something like, "This is awesome. I love going to coffee shops too." Then I insert a subliminal business play. So this is where this comes in. And I'll say something like, I actually love meeting my clients at coffee shops. It's my favorite way to introduce myself to somebody new. And then I'm going to end it in the form of a question, and I'm going to say, what did you get? Or it looks like you got a honey lavender latte. Those are my favorite too. How would you rate this one on a scale of 1 to 10? So my initial message to someone, this is way number one, right? My initial message to someone is segmented into 3 parts. Recognition of what they posted, acknowledgement of what they posted, right? A subliminal business play, and then ending it in the form of a question. The idea, obviously, in ending it in a question is that they're more likely to respond. Anybody, if you live in this land of curiosity and you ask a lot of questions, eventually that person will open up and ask you something. Or you might get that person that's just really open to sending you a long message in response because of how you address them and because of how you ask that question. So does that make sense for way number one?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's the subliminal business play is that first way of being able to alleviate the issue of transitioning from we're talking about something personal into something business. Now the second way to transition from personal to business is straight up saying it, right? You do a go back and forth 4 to 6 times, 4 to 6 messages back and forth. And again, it doesn't have to be 4, it doesn't have to be 6. Use your intuition and kind of listen to your gut there and like see how the conversation is going. And then I've had clients that have done this really freaking well, and they'll say, I know, hey Dan, I know you and I have been chatting a bunch. I'm actually a really active real estate agent in your area, and I'd love the opportunity to take you out for coffee at that coffee shop that you and I were talking about last week. Are you available next week? Right? So you're able to go from, hey, we've just been chit-chatting, to straight up saying, hey, I know you and I have been chatting back and forth, but here's the key here, or here's the key in this piece, which is make sure that you would like bring up the connective piece you've shared leading up to the ask, right? So there's a reason why you don't just go for the ask right out of the gate with the initial message. There's a reason why you build rapport and then you come out and say, hey, I know you and I have been chatting a bunch about coffee. I'm actually a really active real estate agent in your area, and I go to this coffee shop all the time. I would love to meet you there. Are you available next week, Wednesday? Right? And give them a date and time. So there are 2 different approaches. One of them is a little bit more forthcoming right out of the gate. One of them is a little bit of a slower play that allows you to build more rapport before you do. But the subliminal play, if done correctly, will create or will make sure that it doesn't come across salesy and doesn't come across weird.
Amazing. Well, you've got a couple different ways I know that you help your clients out, ranging from teaching to doing some of it for them to doing all of it for them. So can you just briefly describe how you help your clients, the different options they have, and then how they can learn more if they're interested in that?
Yeah, for sure. So we have, I created a course called Beyond the Method in 2019, like I was talking about more towards the beginning. And Beyond the Method is my course. It's 90 videos, it's 27 homework assignments. It is very meaty. It really is my life's work, I like to say. And what it truly does is walk you through all of the passive aspect, all of the active aspect of what we've been talking about now. And it combines email marketing, and it combines what I call the 12 days of giving, which is a really fun part of the year that we're actually walking into right now. So really it's a course of taking both the passive aspect of social and the active approach and combining them and really showing you how to leverage all of it. It's not your standard, here's how to go viral, here's how to get more followers. Like, that's just not who we are, and that's just not what we do. So that's the first way. The course is self-paced, so you'd be able to go through it on your own and learn it as you go, I think is a good way of saying that. Now, on as far as the done for you side, we have 2 options. So we either have clients who pay us to help them with engagement, so we would do all of their active prospecting for them, or we have clients that pay us to do the whole shebang, which is all of their content, create and develop all of their copy. We would also, in addition to that, do all of their engagement. So the engagement is where we would actually do that 45-20 for you Monday through Friday. And I have a really robust staff of people here. I do not use VAs, and I feel like that's important to say, especially when it comes to engagement. All of my girls are taught and trained by me directly to do this on behalf of our clients. So really those are the 3 options. I teach classes a lot. I speak nationally. So it really just depends on what someone needs.
Okay, and if there's someone watching or listening that wants to learn more, connect with you, how how would they do that?
Easiest way is Instagram. I answer all of my own messages for sure, and I'm pretty much always in there, as one could imagine, right? But Berman Media Social is my Instagram handle, and I'm sure that that'll be in the show notes for people too.
Awesome. Well, we will certainly include that. Thank you for being on the show today. I learned a lot, took some good notes. So I hope everyone watching did as well. And to all of our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. Please share this episode with other people you think would benefit. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.